One.
Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for March 24th, 2021. Recently, actually on March 12th, 2020, it just feels recent, I suppose, Governor Baker issued an executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, allowing public bodies to carry out responsibilities while adhering to public health recommendations regarding social distancing. And the executive order allows public bodies to use a remote meeting platform such as Zoom to conduct their business. In addition to information on Zoom being on the public agenda, there's also information on how to watch on television at the same time. And if you're on Zoom, you can use either a phone or a regular computer. Thank you very much. Just to let people know, we are going to open the meeting, go into executive session, and we'll come back out of executive session, and then we'll be having our hearings after that. So thank you everyone for your patience. It's going to be a meeting with a lot of agenda items. So again, thank you for your patience. I move to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, subsection 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, as I believe that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board. And this is specifically with regard to 432 Adams Street. May I have a second? Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Richard? Mr.
Yes,
Richard?
yes.
The music threw me off. Mr. Zula?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Collins, yes. I do see we only have 7 attendees and just, but I think we can at least take care of item number 3. I just didn't want to start the hearing until we have more people back. Item number 3 is discussion regarding the purchase of 432 Adams Street. And that's talking about what we just discussed in executive session. And that's with regard to purchasing land for a new East Milton fire station. And I have to say, I really would like Mr. Zulus and Mr. Wells actually to say something about this, because they were our team who worked on it. So I know it's a long meeting and we don't need to say a lot, but if you just would like to tell people what just transpired.
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, without disclosing what happened in executive session, certainly we can disclose what we voted to disclose
Exactly
in executive session. So what we have been able to say before is that this was this issue of the St. Agatha's property and whether to use that for the East Milton Fire Station was turned over to this board in late December. We hired an appraiser, we hired a law firm, so we'd have some idea. And then we began discussions with the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston to discuss, at that point, a potential lease. We had some discussions about a lease. The discussions turned to a potential sale. And now we have a non-binding letter of intent. It's a non-binding letter of intent on both. It's non-binding on both parties for the town to purchase the property for $890,000. That is in the range of the value that we received from the professional appraiser on this, and it is something that, again, in a non-binding fashion, is agreeable, as we understand it, to the Archdiocese of Boston, and I think we have presented to the warrant committee an article for that purchase. It's a decision the town meeting will have to make. And we've presented that article to the warrant committee, and it provides for bonding the purchase price of the land in order to pay for it. And so I think that about does it. Richard, you can fill in anything that I missed.
No, that covers it to where we're at right now. I just want to thank Michael, Dan Clark, and Brian Walsh, who also worked very hard on this. Father Pilati, and the pastor of St. Agatha's, Jack Riley, and the finance council, parish council, and all the neighbors who weighed in. This has been a lot of work, but this, I think we all believe that this will be a true benefit for the firefighters and for public safety in the town of Milton.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it. All of your efforts. Okay, and I'm looking through the names to see if we have mostly everyone back. And I think we do. And I do see Mr. Walsh, who's the Fire Station Building Committee Chair. I'm sorry that we missed you in executive session. I apologize. Hopefully you just heard the announcement. Okay. If people would join the board for the Pledge of Allegiance, we would appreciate it. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
To
to the flag
of
of the United States of America
and to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which
which
it
stands
nation,
one nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
with liberty
and
and
justice.
justice
for
for all.
Thank you. So just for the record, and perhaps people at home or watching from wherever they're watching, or for those who might be sight impaired, if we could just share our names, who's here this evening. So I'm Melinda Collins. I'm chair of the board. Katie Conlon is vice chair. Arthur Doyle is secretary. Mike Zulis is member, and Richard Wells is a member. You see the beautiful picture he has there. And Mr. Dennehy is our town administrator. And with us also are our executive administrative assistant, Hillary Waite, and Sean Doyle of MATV, our wonderful partners in bringing this to you. So I will say, before we go to public comment, people who are here about hearings, you'll have a chance to speak during that time. So if you're not pressed for time, I would appreciate it if you could wait until the hearing in order to speak and ask questions. If people wish to speak on some other issue, or would just like to make a statement or share something, we will take public comment now. So if people go down to the bottom of their computer screen, if they're using a computer, they can press raise hand to raise your hand, and other people who are on the phone can press *9 in order to raise your hand, and then *6 to toggle on and off for mute. So I'm just going to give it a moment, because sometimes it can be a bit tricky, and you might. Okay. So, oh, thanks, Hillary. I don't think anyone has raised their hand. So I think people have come to observe and perhaps speak at the hearing. I know that we have one person so far, at least. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. There are 19 attendees. I always like to let people know how many people are in the meeting with you besides us. So thank you everyone for your patience. I realized the first public hearing was supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and we just had a bit of a scheduling snafu. So we are starting a bit late, but we appreciate your patience. So we are now opening a public hearing for a storage tank installation at Wollaston Golf Club, addresses 999 Randolph Avenue. Again, my name is Melinda Collins, and I'm Chair of the Select Board, which is the statutory licensing authority for the town of Milton. And we will be holding tonight's hearing. I'll be chairing the event, and with me again are members of the board, Katie Conlon, Arthur Doyle, Richard Wells, and Michael Zulus, as well as Town Administrator Michael Dennehy. We'll also be having some additional guests this evening. Chief Madden, I believe, was here earlier. Hopefully he is. And Fire Inspector Mataliano, is he joining us this evening? No, Chief? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Grandin from Wollaston. In conformity with the requirements of MGL Chapter 148, Section 13, we're convening this public hearing upon the petition of Wollaston Golf Club to install 9 1,000-gallon propane tanks and 1 500-gallon propane tank, with a breakdown as follows: 6,500 gallons to be stored in above-ground containers and 3,500 gallons to be stored in underground containers to be located at the golf club at 999 Roundhouse Avenue. All abutters have been notified, and the public hearing was noticed in the Milton Times, and Mr. Charles Grandin is here for the hearing, and Chief Madden also is in attendance. Since this is a public hearing, the board welcomes input and questions from the public. And if you have a question or a comment when it's the time, please give your name and street address prior to speaking. And first we'll hear from the applicant and then from Chief Madden, and we'll take questions from the board and the public. And then if we need additional information, we'll continue the hearing. After the hearing closes, I will entertain a motion on the application, and the board will deliberate the merits of the application. Welcome, Mr. Grandin, and thank you for joining us. Oh, and we also have, I'm sorry, I don't know if your whole name is here. I can't quite read. It says Rosemary Blasi, and welcome. And my apologies if I have mispronounced your name or it's incomplete on the screen.
That's correct. Rosemary Blasi is the controller.
Oh.
And we also have John Holmes from Devaney Fuel.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And welcome, Mr. Holmes, as well. So the board would be happy to hear from you.
Chief, do you want to start on this, Chief Madden?
Sure. So could everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me. So this was something that Wollaston has had propane for years, and it was an oversight. They've added a few tanks over the years, and it was an oversight that anything over 2,000 gallons requires a license. All their tanks have been fully inspected. Mr. Holmes from Devaney Fuel, they've inspected their tanks and their systems, and we've had a great working relationship with them. We're just trying to get caught up on the records in our system, just to make them whole with having the license, having over 2,000 gallons.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Grandin or Mr. Holmes, do you have anything to add?
I think the additional propane was due to when the renovation in 2019 of the building, expanding the dining facilities, changing over the heating system. That's what the additional tanks are needed for, to provide that mass flow of propane into the facility, which I think John could probably speak to.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Holmes.
Yeah, so when we did the calculations, that we came up with the additional tanks. The underground ones were for the golf facility. Then the additional tanks were when they added on to the actual golf club. But it was all based on the initial calculations, like 4.733 million BTUs, but the actual load they were looking for was 5.3. So that was what was required to have it operate correctly. That's why we needed additional tanks.
Do board members have questions or comments?
I have a question for the chief, Madam Chair. Chief, it was a little hard for me to hear you. It might have been on my end, but I think you said that they've had that Wallaston has had these tanks previously and may have been over 2,000, which was the limit, and there wasn't a license because it wasn't recognized that a license. I'm not quite sure what I heard you say, but I think it was that a license hadn't been obtained previously, but that the tanks have been there. And I guess my question is, can you confirm that I heard you correctly? And also, have there been any issues in the past, if that's the case, with the tanks, with safety or anything related to that?
So, yeah, they've had multiple tanks there, and they did the addition back in 2019. Can you hear me as well? Okay, right now? Or?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay. So they've had the tanks all along, and they expanded in 2019 and took on a few more tanks. We really haven't had any issues. We had one leak once, I think probably in the fall, and that the fire department handled pretty well. And having conversations with Mr. Grandin and Wallaston Golf Course, they've worked with Mr. Holmes and Devaney Energy to come out and have that system inspected again. And they promised to, have those things inspected, those tanks inspected every 6 months and report back to the fire department. But everything was up to snuff. The permits were good. Just the only oversight was the fact that it required a license, and this is a new part of it for the town, the department. So that's where we are. We just wanted to make them whole once we figured out what was going on. And that was more, Lieutenant Metalliano has done a fantastic job in fire prevention for us. And this came about when we went with Walcott Woods and we were doing inspections there. And then we figured out that the only other place that had over 2,000 gallons of propane was Wallaston Golf Course. So we wanted to make sure that all of our residents in town or businesses in town that had that, we wanted to make sure they were all on the same level playing field.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Mr. Wells?
Just to follow up, thank you, Madam Chair, with Chief Madden, just for the general public. These type tanks are found, Chief, you can call them pretty commonly across Cape Cod and southeastern Mass, where natural gas is not extended, and it's the primary use of gas for facilities like Wallaston almost extensively through the Cape and Islands, and they're very common. Am I correct?
They're also very common in the town. There's many residences in town that go with propane. Just the fact that it's such a large building, and to heat and to cook everything there, they have to have the large amounts just to make sure that they're operating appropriately in the wintertime or summertime when they're cooking as well.
Yeah, I believe Hendry's also had many tanks in their day when they were actually manufacturing ice cream there.
So, Chief, so I understand that it was permitted and so inspected for safety, but just this step of coming to the select board for a license. So.
Right, it was just to make them whole, just so that going forward, anybody else that wants that to have that, to make sure that we cover our bases to say that everybody in town that has that level of propane is all licensed. So Wallaston's been great to work with on this. So we wholeheartedly, back them in their license.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. Does anyone else have questions on the board? Okay, so at this time, if people from the attendees pool would like to speak to this application, and okay. And can you please correct my pronunciation of your name if it's incorrect? I really do. I like to know how to say people's names correctly. So, Mr. Udamathias, see, I already. So, I'm sorry, sir.
That's okay, Melinda. Dr. Sai Odamasatian, I'm an associate professor at MGH, but I live at 45 Woodside Drive and own the property at 39 Woodside Drive. My only concern is that are the propane tanks going to be adjacent to the shed, the club, where they have all the equipment? Because, a couple of weeks ago, Fire Chief, there was a brush fire that they created and they had to call, all these fire trucks here. The neighbors did, three houses down, and we're only 150 yards from that stone wall. So I can only imagine like 9,500, pounds of like propane or gallons of propane if they went on fire would be concerning. But otherwise, I'm totally in favor if Wollaston would like propane tanks, just not close to my backyard, please.
The tanks are not adjacent to that facility. There is one small tank behind that facility on the Gulf side, which is surrounded by grass. But none of these are close to that facility.
Where could you tell me exactly where they're going to be placed then?
They're actually, they're up by the clubhouse along the driveway.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
By the white fence, and then 3 are also buried underground.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we have Ms. Hanley.
Yes, hi. My name is Carrie Hanley, and I live at 11 Woodside Drive. My neighbor Sai kind of touched on one of my questions, but actually the driving range is right behind us. So when you say near the white fence, near the clubhouse, exactly how close, that seems pretty close to the driving range, is it?
It's across the road from the driving range, up on the hill next to the clubhouse. So it's probably about a quarter of a mile.
That's only about 250 feet away from my house.
That's my husband now.
Sorry, I'm Niall Hanley, Kerry's husband. We'll be looking at it right out of backyard. I am concerned about it, that close to my house. I'm not opposed to propane, and I know all about propane. I'm a contractor myself, and I understand we put in tanks, and I put tanks in myself for people's homes, but that amount is concerning for me. And as I just mentioned about the brush fire, if anything ever happened, it's just so close. It's just too close for comfort. I would prefer to see him on the other side, away from my place, and I don't want to see nearly 10,000 gallons of propane exploding. It would take out the whole neighborhood.
Charles, just correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know the layout of the course as well, but you drive up the road, and I believe, is it 10 that's on our right as you come up the road? Or is that 1? I'm not sure of the golf course, but you come up the road, and as you come up the road, the tanks are on the left-hand side.
Well, the 10th is along the right side after you go, past the maintenance facility going up towards the clubhouse. That's the 10th. And then the driving range, which is, as these folks are speaking, is on the other side of that. And then on the left side of the road is where there are those 6,000 gallons of the tanks. And then the other 3,000 are on the other side of the building, up around on the opposite side of the clubhouse, on the other, buried under.
We get it located exactly where they're going.
Sorry, are we still allowed to talk?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Is it possible to get a map, or, will something be put at the town hall that we could, log on and see exactly the location of these tanks?
I was just thinking, in the future, I'd really love to have a map for something like this. Because it seems a little.
Lieutenant Italiano has been working with Mr. Bishop with the GIS. And I know that one of the things that we're working on with him is to be able to map every tank in the town. So that is something that we're working on and trying to go forward to have everything GIS located, GPS located positions on all in the map GIS system. So that is something that we're working on with Mr. Bishop at the time, but I don't have one currently with me.
So I guess my feeling is these tanks are already in place. And I'm just wondering how to make people feel safe, if that's possible. Wondering if we need to have, the neighborhood talk with Wollaston. I'm not sure, we haven't faced this before, so I'm not sure what a really good path forward would be, because I take people's safety concerns seriously, as I'm sure you all do. So, Chief.
So all the tanks have been permitted and inspected by the Milton Fire Department. So they've been in place for years, and they've been inspected and tested, and they've in conjunction with the current mass laws. So they are properly placed, and and I understand the thought about this, but I'm just trying to figure out, a best way to say that I think they're in a safe enough distance if anything were to go wrong. But I just don't know where. I just don't know the course enough to say exactly how far they're away. I believe Mr. Grandin would be right about a quarter of a mile. But they're within the laws. Close enough to the clubhouse. They're close to the clubhouse. I think 25 feet, Mr. Holmes. I forget what the.
Yep.
So they're allowed to be within 25 feet of the building, and that's where they're located, up next to the clubhouse.
Mr. Zulus?
I ask, perhaps the golf club has a map or a rendering that shows where the tanks are located?
You can actually see them on Google Maps, the ones that are above ground, which is the ones that people are talking about. If you look at Google Maps, they're literally on there.
So, Mr. Grandin, I don't know anything about the brush fire. Was that near? Do you know anything about it? I guess I should ask that.
Yeah, that was about 2 weeks ago, under a permitted burn.
Mm-hmm.
And then the winds picked up in the afternoon, and it caught some leaves, which ran into a neighbor's yard, and they had a bunch of brush piled up against the stone wall, and some of that caught. The fire department did take care of it, knocked it down. We actually called it in from the club, but it was unfortunate.
But it wasn't. The burn wasn't near the propane.
No, we don't burn in that area at all. We have one specific area where we're allowed to burn annually, and well, two actually. One over in the middle of the golf course, and then that one.
Yes, Mr. Zulus.
Just very quickly, just to go back to the map for a minute, is there someone that could maybe get us a shot of the Google map, just so we have a common set of facts, so we can look at the map and see where everything is? If there's someone who could do that, and just kind of so the neighbors know and we know, and
right. Hillary, are you able to do that since you can screen share? Here she is. Thank you.
So zoom in on the clubhouse. So
I'm not terribly familiar with the golf course.
If you just go straight in. Yeah. Okay, stop. Yep, stop right. Okay, so you can see the white tanks right along below the pool, just below the pool. Go straight down from the pool. Yeah, there you go. Up, just past it. No, right there. Up a little
Right there,
more.
Hillary, right there.
Are they the long white?
Yes.
Okay, so
Wonderful.
they curve around the edge of the road.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
On the other side.
Okay. Actually, can we still speak?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
actually, this is actually helpful.
Yes, so that alleviated some of our concerns. Thank you.
We thought
Okay.
we thought it was down lower here.
Okay,
If you go back out, if you zoom back out,
Mhm.
on the
Yeah, we're right over to the on the right side there.
we're on the right hand side there.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
I know.
You thought
We're
it
here.
was-
yeah,
That's
us.
that's us. That's
Yeah.
our house.
So
Well,
that's-
that's great. I'm so glad that you brought that up so that we could help you, alleviate your concerns and really understand the situation. Without a site walk, that can be hard, but God bless Google Maps
So
or Google Earth. So, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you for that creative, solution there. Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, I'd be interested in knowing the location of the buried tanks.
I can answer that real quick. They're on the opposite side of the clubhouse. So if you looked at the clubhouse to the left, there's a couple of buried tanks on that side.
Are they under lawn or what are they under?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay,
You can just see the tops of them, and they have to have protection. They have poles around them so nobody can drive through it. So,
okay, great. Oh, thank you. Well, we've just learned a whole lot.
and next time I'll make sure we have a map of the situation. I apologize.
Okay, well, no, that it's really helpful. I don't think we realized that we might need a map either, or we would have asked you earlier, Chief. So thank you. Okay, so I believe there's one other person, Ms. Craven or Craven. I'm sorry, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, it's Janet and John Craven, and we're the house where the fire was. And we called the fire department and at 4:45, and we were home and we saw that Wollaston had been burning brush and during the day, but when they left at 4 o'clock or whatever time they leave, after they left, we started seeing little fires over there. And we were watching them carefully just to see if they were being attended. And then all of a sudden, we saw that it was coming into our yard and we realized it wasn't being attended. So my question is, a lot of these tanks are in people's homes and they're in developments where it's a residence where people live. And I'm just concerned, like there are times at Wollaston that it's off season or there isn't anybody up there. And, that's my concern is I don't think you guys have security up there. Not that you sit and watch your tanks all the time, but it's not a residence. It's a place that's not always occupied. So that's my concern is we did call that in and we did see that happen, but we happened to be home.
Ms. Craven, would you mind giving me your address, please?
37 Woodside.
Oh, thank
33.
you.
Oh, we're 33.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great.
Oh, God.
So Chief, I don't know if you can answer anything, but I think also, Mr. Grandin? Oh, there, you just went to the top. Sorry. Would you like to talk about, who might be there in the off season?
Sure. I mean, as the club's evolved, it's actually becoming a year-round facility. The only time we really shut down the clubhouse is the month of January, but now that we've, with the renovation, put in the addition of a fitness center and yoga facility and all that, the club is basically a 12-month operation now. That's where it's changed just from being a golf course like it was with the latest renovation. And we're moving more towards that direction in the future with paddle tennis and some other opportunities coming up in the next couple of years. We do restaurant business, basically restaurants, catering and functions 12 months a year now. So that's the style of operation it is right now. And you do apologize about the unfortunate incident with the brush fire. And, it was permitted, but the winds kicked up in the afternoon and it did get away. And fortunately enough, Chief Madden and their team were able to address it. Mr. Wells?
Could I ask a second question?
Just one minute.
Go ahead, Madam Chair. Go ahead. Let her ask that
Thank
question
you.
first.
Ms. Craven, yes, please go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, because I don't think we're far from one of the tanks that, that you said is down by the shed that we're near. Our neighborhood is near that shed. How, like, could that have exploded that gas tank, Chief Madden? I mean, is it close enough if that fire, because the fire was also on the Wollaston Golf Course side.
So I could never say that it will never explode. But under those situations, the amount of heat that it would take to cause a BLEVE or a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion of a 500 gallon tank, it takes a great amount of heat. And the brush fires around here don't generate enough heat long enough to have that happen. It would take an automobile fire or a building fire or one of those large brush fires that you see out in California. It takes a tremendous amount of heat to cause something like that to happen. So where it is now, it's located down there. It's on the opposite side of the clubhouse from Woodside, so it's kind of protected. And I can never say it will never happen. There's a 1 in a million chance that it could happen, but it's a 1 in a million chance. But you know, one of the things that we go to the gas school, all the firefighters here are all trained to deal with propane emergencies. Propane is a very, very common. Propane is probably more common than natural gas in the U.S. So it's all over the place. New Hampshire, Vermont, any kind of rural settings, propane is probably one of the #1 sources of heat and cooking. So it's a very, very safe industry. And so it's just one of those things like gasoline or anything else. Once you get over a certain amount, you need to make sure that it's permitted and licensed. And that's what we're doing, is just to make sure that they have the proper paperwork and making sure that Wollaston Golf Course keeps their license new by making sure they have it inspected on a regular basis. And that's where we are.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you for the good work you did that night. You guys and girls were very good. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Craven. I'll take Mr. Wells and then Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo part of what Chief Madden said, and also to comment on Wollaston as an industry or as a business in town. I believe they've been in our community for well over 50 years, and I can't think of any significant incidents ever happened there at all in my tenure. And to the Chief's point, I just wanted to hear where Lieutenant Italiano was, and once I heard where he was, I know how he is with these things, then I was much comfortable with it. Is the Chief has articulated, propane is throughout our community. Some of the more serious propane things I've seen happen from regular gas grill propane, 25-pound tanks that can take a house down in a heartbeat. So if the Chief is comfortable with this and Lieutenant Italiano is, I am as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief Madden, for reconfirming the location of the buried tanks, or predominantly buried tanks. Just for my background information, based upon experiences I've had in living in other communities throughout the country, do we permit spring burns? In other words, when somebody wants to do a spring burn on a private property, they have to obtain a permit from the department?
Yes, we do. We do have a burn permit that they have to call each day to make sure that it's okay to burn. And I do know the fire that day that happened. I was notified of it just shortly after it. And one of the things that we do is, you know, most of the people in town that have burned for years, it's the same site every time. And Wollaston's site is very safe. Lieutenant Italiano makes sure that he's up there all the time. He makes sure that, you know, that their site is right. It's just one of those days that the wind picked up real quick in the afternoon. And I believe, Mr. Grandin, I believe the fire was out a while before that. And then it maybe not had been totally put out. And right now, with the ground cover, you know, there wasn't much snow cover for this spring. So brush fire season is way ahead of its normal pace this year. there are brush fires all over the state currently. So that's one of the things that we make sure that, if somebody does burn, we need to make sure that they're doing it safely. And, sometimes we'll go out and inspect, just do random inspections, some days on a Saturday in April when the last day is April 30th, we could get 50 people burning each day. So, it's a little time consuming, but we make sure that, they call the firehouse and get permission. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your question, Mr. Doyle. Do any other members have questions?
Madam Chair, there are two hands still up, including Ms. Craven, who I think raised her hand again a second time. I don't think it's still up. I think she put it back up.
Okay.
She's taking it down now, it looks like.
Okay, so there's someone here with the initials KBG. If you could please give us your name and your address and address the board, please. Welcome.
My name is Krishna KBG, and I'm from 21 Woodside Drive. Can you hear me? Yes. The question is to the chief. What was the leak? You had a problem in 2019 with the existing propane gas tank.
I'm sorry, sir. Your audio went out, and we didn't get your address and your statement or your question.
My address is 21 Woodside Drive.
Thank you, sir.
And the question is to the chief. What was the problem you had in 2019 with the propane gas tanks?
You can just...
I'm not sure when in 2019, in the fall of 2020, there was a leak on the system up by the clubhouse, and it was a loose fitting, or I can't, I don't know the exact, but I know that the propane industry, I think Devane Energy came out and had their inspectors come out and redo the system to make sure that everything was okay. So it could be smelled a little bit of a distance away. Some of the houses could smell propane. Propane has an additive called mercaptan, which is extremely pungent, and everyone can smell it. Even the smallest leak, you can smell it a great distance away. That's why they add the mercaptan. Our companies didn't get anything. We have a gas meter, and as we were going through the neighborhood trying to locate the source of the leak, they have their gas meters out and didn't pick up any kinds of flammable gas on it. So it wasn't enough to burn the distance away that the person who called that night. So it was a minor leak, quickly remedied by Wollaston Golf Course and Devane Energy. So, and that just, it had nothing to do with the permit or the license or anything like that. It was just something that just needed a little bit of upkeep. And one of the talks with Mr. Grandin and Mr. Holmes, every 6 months, they're going to inspect those tanks to make sure that that system is operating properly.
Okay.
The second question I have is, currently you have 5 cylinders. And how many cylinders do you have now? 5 cylinders, right? Currently, how many cylinders do you have? 3, 4?
They have, it's here.
Here.
9 1,000-gallon propane tanks and 1 500-gallon propane tank.
But that's a new plant. But how many tanks we have now?
That's what's there.
That is there. This is an existing thing that we're going back in time to make sure that they have the license.
Okay.
Right. They've been permitted for several years and inspected for several years, but Chief Madden, perhaps you were not on a little earlier, sir. Chief Madden had let us know that they had been permitted, but that the licensing authority, which is the select board, hadn't been notified, and so they're just rectifying that now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your attending and your questions. Okay. Does the board feel that we can close the evidentiary portion of the hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing, Matt.
You have one additional hand up.
Oh, where is that? Oh, okay, it's back. Okay. Ms. Hanley, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to know what the safety measures are for the propane, there was a leak. I remember that now. Also, myself and my husband remember that after our neighbor brought that up. We could smell it when it happened that time. We were calling the gas company. We didn't know what was going on. So I guess my question would be, what safety mechanisms are there in place? At the time, we thought it was like maybe gas in our house, and we were calling our neighbors, and we were kind of nervous about it. We weren't notified until, a day or two later where it originated from. So I guess I'm just wondering, what are the safety measures that are in place for that? And is there a way to notify people so they know what's going on and they're not panicking if that were to happen again?
Mm-hmm. Chief Madden?
So just the odor of it itself is a safety measure, so that it's a very pungent smell. So even if it's a small, minute amount, again, that night that we were going around looking for, we have our meters that can test any kind of flammable atmosphere, and we weren't getting any readings on the meter. So a very, very small amount of that mercaptan can really trigger, an alarm response to the general public. As far as distance, you're a quarter mile away. Again, it takes a great fire to cause those tanks to rupture in that explosive manner. All the fire department has been trained to deal with those kind of burns, those kind of issues if we have them. The tanks itself have overpressure devices which will release gas safely just to send it out so the tank won't rupture in that violent manner that it is. So there are inherent safety measures inside that. And one of the things that we always tell anybody, if you smell gas, call the fire department. We'll respond and we'll check out and we'll try and get that source figured out as quickly as we can and try and make it safe.
Thank you. So Mr. Grandin, I think I also hear, it sounds as if the problems have been rectified, but if in the future something like that occurs, it sounds as if neighbors would appreciate some sort of communication so that they know that it's coming from Wollaston versus one of their neighbors. Am I understanding that, Ms. Hanley?
Yes. Like I said, we smelled, something that night. We were calling our neighbors and we were in a bit of a panic. We thought it was coming from our house. We were running around the house. My husband's calling. We have children in the house, as do many of our neighbors, and just nobody knew what was happening. I didn't know to call the fire department. I guess I will call the fire department in the future. I was calling National Grid. So.
Okay.
This is a public safety thing. If you smell gas in the house, to anybody that's watching, leave the house, call 911 first. We'll come out, we'll inspect the house. You're outside the house. And then we'll call National Grid for you and have them come out and check it out. We'll make it safe first, and then they'll be able to rectify any kind of situation if you smell gas.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. And they're wonderful they're wonderful when they come to your house. I know from experience. So,
I do as well for many reasons.
Right. But Mr. Grandin, obviously that just to know if something ever happens, then neighbors might appreciate that as well.
Absolutely. I can appreciate that
Yeah.
comment and that wanting to know that it was an issue, that there was a leak, and Mr. Holmes and his team came in, and the Monday after that, it was a Sunday night, I think it was Columbus Day weekend, and they came in and basically took the system apart piece by piece. I think there was a small joint that had a dope failure on a joint, and that was completely rebuilt, inspected, recertified, and now we're doing that on a 6-month, every 6 months in a more progressive manner, inspecting it, and they're providing the chief with a report every 6 months of the condition of the pipes and the system. So
Thank you for that dedicated follow-up. Yes, Chief Madden.
If I may, that was something that's not part of the permitting process. That's not part of the licensing process. They just decided on their own to make sure that nothing like that happened again, and they're going to make sure that it's inspected on a regular basis. So we appreciate them.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hanley, is that answers your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks, Ms. Conlon, for spotting that hand raised. So just to make sure, don't see other hands raised. I'm gonna go, they all should be at the top, but just in case. Okay, great, thank you. So do members feel that we can close the evidentiary portion of the hearing? Thank you. So I will entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, thank you. And then we have a motion to approve a license or to confer a license.
I'll make a motion to confer a license on Austin Golf Course for the tanks addressed in their permit approved by the fire department.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Well, thank you, Mr. Grandin, Mr. Holmes, and Ms. Blossy,
Thank
and for attending. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you all. Thank you very much.
And Chief can't go anywhere yet. He's he has a little more to go. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, great. And Mr. Gallagher is here. Good evening. Welcome, Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is from Northland, which is the company developing Wollaston. I mean, not Wollaston, sorry, Walcott Woods. It's already at 8:15. I'm already tired. Sorry about that. So we are now going to open the public hearing for a storage tank installation by Northland Residential Construction LLC, otherwise known as Walcott Woods Residential LLC, and that's at 1672 Canton Avenue, or I should say it's both those LLCs. So just to remind people, since this is a new hearing, I'm Melinda Collins, Chair of the Select Board, which is the statutory licensing authority for the town of Milton, and we're holding this evening's hearing. With me are members of the board, Katie Conlon, Arthur Doyle, Michael Zulus, and Richard Wells. And also with us are our town administrator, Michael Dennehy, and Fire Chief Madden. And as I said, Mr. Gallagher of Northland.
Chair, I think Mr. Zulus has a question.
Yes, Mr. Zulus.
Madam Chair, if I may, I understand the warrant committee is looking for some feedback on that other issue that we sent to them tonight. So
yes,
what I might do is absent myself for a few moments and then come back after
Thank
that.
you.
Okay.
I appreciate your doing that.
All right.
Thank you. Send our greetings.
Yeah. All right, leave me.
Maybe we should send donuts.
Yes, they probably need coffee, really, at this point. So in conformity with the requirements of Section 13, Chapter 148 of the Mass General Laws, the board is convening a public hearing upon the petition of Northland Residential Construction LLC, CO Walcott Woods Residential LLC for the storage of 23 1,000-gallon propane tanks and 13 500-gallon propane tanks for a total of 29,500 gallons of propane to be stored in underground containers to be located at 1672 Canton Avenue. All abutters have been notified, and the public hearing was noticed in the Milton Times. Let's see. I think Mr. Skehill, Director of Construction, was supposed to be here, but we have Mr. Gallagher instead. And I just want to let people know how we will proceed. Because this is a public hearing, the board welcomes input and questions from the public. If you have a question or comment when it's the appropriate time, please give your name and your street address prior to speaking. First, we'll open the hearing, which we've done, and then we'll hear from the applicant and town staff and take questions from the board and then the public. And if additional information is needed, then the hearing will be continued to a future date. If the evidentiary portion of the hearing concludes, then I will entertain a motion to close the hearing, and then we'll entertain a motion on the application, and the board will deliberate the merits of the application if we haven't already done so in the course of the evidentiary hearing. So thank you again for attending, Mr. Gallagher. If you would like to address the board, please do so.
Sure. And I will say that I heard the earlier conversation. So in the meantime, I sent a map of the site to Hillary. So if she wants to share that, that might be helpful.
That would be great.
But in the meantime, I'll kind of move ahead here. So I'm sure most of you are generally familiar with the project. Obviously, it's 54 townhouse units that are being built on Canton Ave. There you go. On Canton Ave, and the site is approximately 45 acres. So the project consists of 3 historic buildings that we're renovating, and then 31 new buildings that we're building. And those buildings are a combination of single family homes and duplexes. So total of 34 buildings, 45 acres of land. So that's about, 1.3 acres per building. So it's a fairly low density site. In terms of where we are, we got the special permit in spring of 2019, and construction in fall of 2019. And for the most part, at the beginning of construction, we were focused on site work. So there was quite a bit of site work, both on Canton Avenue itself, an offsite sewer extension, and coming off the street, building a new road, extending utilities, doing a considerable amount of underground storage for stormwater and so on. So we've essentially finished that. We completed the first of the historic renovations, which is Devon's house nearest to Canton Ave, and we've started the construction of the new units. So there's 2 single family units behind Devon's, and then as you go up the drive, so it's the ones that are closer to Canton Ave, there's those 3 there. That's the Devon's house cluster, we're calling it. And then as you go up the drive, you reach the intersection, and we're going to proceed in a counterclockwise direction around the site. So we've started digging the foundation. We dug some holes, put in some foundations for the first few of the duplexes up by the intersection, and we'll just kind of keep going around in a counterclockwise direction. So that's where we stand in terms of construction. In terms of the fuel, so we have installed 2 propane tanks so far already. One, a 500-gallon tank for the Devon's house itself, and then another 1,000-gallon tank serving the 2 singles behind it. So that's a total of 1,500. So we're below the, statutory 2,000, which is why we were able to do it as of right. That being said, obviously, as we continue, we're not there yet in terms of, we're starting the next buildings, but we will obviously hit that threshold. So that's the reason that we're here. And this plan is something that we produced with our civil engineer, landscape architect, working with Eastern Propane, who's going to be our propane supplier. And the concept is essentially to provide, it's not exactly, but the idea is essentially to provide, for the most part, 500 gallons of propane storage per unit. So that can come in the form of a single 500-gallon tank for a single house, or it can come in the form of a 1,000-gallon tanks that's sub-metered, and shared by 2 separate units of a duplex. And as you can see, obviously the homes are fairly distributed around the site, and so as a result, the propane tanks are as well. These are all underground tanks, so it's even more safe than a normal propane tank. I know the chief spoke about those safety of these earlier, but they'll all be buried. You'll barely see them, and they'll be set back, certainly from any neighboring properties. They'll be set back way further than they're required to be under the NFPA code. So I think, they're fairly small tanks. There are quite a few of them, obviously, around the site, but they're small. They're buried, and they won't be visible or very close to any other neighbors' houses. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And Mr. Gallagher, could you just tell us what your capacity with Northland is?
Sure. I'm the development manager for the project, so I'm kind of on the owner side. I'm working with John. So John's director of construction, and I'm on the development team.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do members have questions?
Madam Chair, I know that we received a memo from Hale and Tucker Smith, and I see that Hale Smith is here. So I'd like to hear his comments orally if he was planning to speak. or if any other members of the public were planning to speak.
Mr. Smith? Welcome. And you're muted. And I know your address, but if you could state it for the
Yes,
record.
I'm sorry.
1632
Canton Avenue. I've been a resident there for 42 years and have been involved with the Northland Wolcott Woods project all during its permitting process. So I'm fairly familiar with the project. My statements are really of a much different tenure than what you heard at your previous meeting. In 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, announced that humanity must reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2030 to avoid the most dire consequences of climate change. Milton is not at a business as usual time. Installation of new fossil fuel infrastructure with an expected life of 20+ years is incompatible with the necessity of decarbonizing Milton's economy. Jack Dolly in the past has claimed to be an environmentalist. He and Northland Corporation now have an opportunity to choose a sustainable technology that helps address climate change rather than worsening it. Inaction on climate change is equivalent to climate change denied. I sincerely hope that this board takes seriously the moral imperative that the town aggressively take action to mitigate its carbon footprint and impact on climate change. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do members have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I have a question, and I don't know whether Mr. Gallagher would know the answer to this or whether we might have to get it, but does the permit issued by the planning board have any provisions regarding heating oil or propane or natural gas, anything relating to this topic? In other words, was this contemplated under the planning board permit?
It's in the permit.
I don't want to say with 100% certainty, but I'm fairly sure that the answer
It is. I checked it today.
does not address it at all.
It's in the special permit. If you and actually our assistant town planner Allison Quinn sent us the map from the special permit in which propane is
corrected.
Yeah, so I read through the original zoning and there's nothing in there about that, but it was permitted as such.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right, I didn't see what, did Allison send that to the board?
I thought she did.
See an email
My
from her.
apologies if she didn't, and I didn't, and I should have sent it on to everyone. But it's in the OneDrive as well, but I realize that not everybody uses that.
I don't think she did, Katie, but
Yeah, I don't,
is correct.
I
It
just
is in
looked,
the
I don't
OneDrive.
have it. Okay.
Yeah. So, but that being said, I know that at least some members of the planning board also take this seriously, and it's a frequent topic of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Committee to try to encourage in housing in general, but in projects the use of stretch codes and if not getting LEED certified, LEED standards such as the Fire Building Committee has done, because that you can get the same effect without the expense of the certification. And I just think that we haven't quite made it in as far as policy. And so that's something that actually Tucker Smith and I were talking about last week. How to move that needle forward, so that when new projects are brought in, we can address those concerns.
So, Madam, I think Richard had his hand up. I'm sorry.
Mr.
No,
Wells.
go ahead, Katie. Go ahead. Katie.
So I just want to clarify. So the permit, because I haven't looked at it, the permit contemplates or authorizes the or plans for the propane tanks to be a part of the project, the source of the heating for the units. This, I don't know how detailed it is and how specific in terms of numbers or anything, but
right. It didn't seem that detailed to me, but that's why I called Allison Quinn and talked to her. But she said yes, that it was part of the actual permitting process, and it was for cooking and heating.
Okay, so I mean, presumably that meant there was a discussion at the planning board. If it's not in the zoning, but it made its way into the permit, there must have been some discussion of this at the planning board. I'm sensitive to Mr. Well, I guess, are we in deliberation now and out of the public hearing?
Well, we're not out of the public hearing.
I mean, I'm sorry, the evidentiary portion of the public.
Right, we're not out of the evidentiary portion yet. So I don't know if.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, just to end the evidentiary portion,
Okay.
then we can get on to the next step.
I don't see any other hands. I want to make sure I don't do that again. So I don't see any other hands. Do any members have additional questions? I don't think so. Okay, go ahead.
I'll second Richard's motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
all those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus is not present at the moment. Ms. Collins, yes. Okay, great. So yes, Mr. Welsh.
So now I do have one question. I take it just from our prior dealings with Northland. This is from Mr. Gallagher. In that I take it propane had to be the choice. Can you just, and I don't know if you can answer this for me, can you just touch base on any of the other environmental initiatives that you've taken, that you put in place for this development outside of obviously having to use, but anything else that you have done that cuts down on the carbon footprint of a project of this magnitude?
Well, I think you can look at it at different levels. Certainly the biggest one would be just the amount of preserved land that we're using. There's a lot of obviously open land here. So that's certainly one thing, all the trees that we're saving, all the open space. With regard to the building specifically, there's the stretch energy code of the state. I will say though that the base energy codes have basically caught up to it almost entirely. So if you just build a building to the 2018, International Energy Code, it's extremely high performing relative to almost any existing building that you would find, even built 10 years ago. So the buildings that we're building are performing, they're going to perform better than, almost any existing house in Milton, just as we're doing them now. I'm 100% confident of that. And then in terms of the use of the fossil fuels, there is kind of a spectrum there too, because these the new furnaces and boilers, powered by natural gas or propane, are actually extremely efficient. They don't emit much at all. They're not like the old oil burners. They don't emit much. They're extremely efficient. They don't put off almost any heat. You can just exhaust them out the side because they don't need a flue or anything. So they're much better than, they're a contributor to reducing the amount of carbon in the air and everything like that. So I think that what we're doing is, if you drive down the street, what we're building is better than almost any existing house that you're going to see in Milton.
Thank you.
Conlon?
So I take Mr. Smith's comments very seriously, and climate change, I think, is an important issue for the board and all of us individually, I'm sure. If the planning board's permit already addresses this, then I think probably our role here tonight is more related to safety. We've already had the fire department's memo addressing their approval. So I'm inclined to go ahead and support this. But I want to say that I understand Mr. Smith's point, and I think we should be cognizant of that for future developments, not only our board, but also the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, any board that's confronting new developments in the town. We should be thinking along the lines of climate change.
Yes.
So I thank Mr. Smith for his comments.
Thank you, Ms. Conlon. Yes, and I think I think our new town planner is looking at a lot of these issues, and the thing to do is to start actually doing having him do some analysis and see where we can go with this. Mr. Smith, would you like to speak again? We've closed the evidentiary portion, but you're not really talking of safety, so I think that's fine.
Thank you. I'm sure that if the permit did include references to propane HVAC systems, that it was certainly missed by almost all public participants, because I don't believe there was any significant discussion of any infrastructure or mechanical systems during the planning board process. That just was not the focus of most of the meetings. And the technology today with heat pumps and solar panels is cost effective with traditional or conventional propane and natural gas systems. And a question I would have for Mr. Gallagher and for Mr. Dolly is whether they have actually evaluated alternative technologies such as heat pumps for this project.
Not for this project. Our company has looked at them and we are using them in certain locations, but it's kind of it depends on the situation. It depends on the layout of the building, layout of the site. To your point, I think things are going in that way in some places, but yeah, it's something that we look at, but it wasn't the thing that made the most sense here.
All right. Well, thank you for confirming my suspicion that you had not looked at it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve the installation and storage of 23 1,000-gallon propane tanks and 13 500-gallon propane tanks to be stored in underground containers to be located at 1672 Canton Avenue at the Walcott Woods Residential Development.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Yes. And Chief Madden, I realize you have another item on the agenda, and I will move it up, but we have a couple of people who've been waiting, and if you don't mind, I am going to take them, and then I'll come right back to you.
Absolutely, I'm here. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dobrin, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Good night, Mr. Gallagher. Have a good evening.
I realize it says Ethan on here. It's because this is the computer my kids use for music lessons.
Oh, well, no, that's quite all right. And just to introduce this agenda item, this is Ms. Dobrindt of the, you're a co-chair for the Milton Road Race this year, I believe. And you're from the Milton Juniors Women's Club. So
yeah. I'm the current vice president of the Women's Club, past president. I was a road race director for 5 years previously and have taken it back on again this year.
Well, I was glad to hear that it would be happening this year.
Yes, last year we did have a virtual race because of the pandemic, and obviously it wasn't prudent nor did we think we would get approval to have a in-person race. And so this year we have decided to push the date back from our normal time of the second Tuesday in June, which would have been the 8th of June, and instead put it in September 14th, hopefully, when at that point we're hoping that, the majority of the town will have been vaccinated, will be back at school, and more social gatherings will be approved. Many races, including like the Boston Marathon, are moving to in-person races for the fall. Boston is having 20,000 participants. Many other larger scale marathons, half marathons are having in-person events. And so we're hoping to, obviously we're not 20,000 person event, but we're hoping to get our numbers back up a little bit this year so that we can contribute back to the community in the ways that we're used to.
Thank you very much. Well, I still had a great time doing it virtually, but I look forward to being with people again. So do any members have questions or comments?
Are we approving this, Madam Chair, or is this just a
Yes,
discussion?
we would need to approve the date of September 14th.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll make a motion to approve September 14th for the Milton Junior Women's Club Annual Road Race. With pleasure.
Second.
Second.
And Ms. Dobrin, I believe though that the Junior Women's Club is ready, will be looking out and will be ready to switch to a virtual event if you need to. But
absolutely, we are going to be, yes, absolutely. We're all hoping that it can be in person, but we are fully cognizant of the fact that it may have to switch gears at any time. We're going to make sure that's very evident in the registration, that at any time it could be switched to a virtual event again if the situation doesn't improve in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Dennehy has been a huge aid to the board in sort of understanding and interpreting. Of course, he works with Caroline Kinsella, who is our health director as well. So I'm sure that Mr. Dennehy would be happy to consult on that as well.
Wonderful.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Yeah, I can be the conduit.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
We need a vote, Madam Chair.
Yes. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, and thank you all so much for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Patty.
Good night.
Good evening.
Have faith. September will be great. Tell your friends, get vaccinated.
I know. We're very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Okay. Terrific. So next we have Mr. Pesarides. I hope that I said your name correctly. We have the approval of transfer of a common vittler's license from Tino's Pizza to KME Milton, doing business as Stevie's. So welcome, Mr. Pesarides. Did I say your name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So a common vittler's license doesn't, because it's being transferred, this doesn't require a public hearing. But if the public, after we hear from the applicant, if there's anyone in the public who'd like to say something, I'm happy to entertain that. And I don't know if you have a presentation prepared or if you just have a statement for the board, but we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, we don't have a presentation. We have a statement prepared. I can just start off and say good evening and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. We appreciate this opportunity to meet and speak with you, even if it has to be virtually. We're excited. We can't wait to open up a business in the town of Milton. We actually live in the town. We've been living in the town for about 10 years. My brothers went to elementary school and high school here. My name is Kyriaki Pesarides, but I go by Sandy, and this is my brother Michael. I'm 32 years old. Michael is 24. And our parents have been in the restaurant industry for about over 30 years, and we've taken over their businesses. We have one business right now in Quincy. It's called Time Out Pizza. And we also have a breakfast place in Weymouth that's called Easter's Country Kitchen. So now we're looking to expand, and we've decided to open something up in the town of Milton, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do members of the board have any questions or comments? Mr. Wells?
I just have one question, Madam Chair. Given that presently now that Tino's is closed, there's no place in the Central Business District to eat lunch at this time. Do we have an idea when you think you might be opening?
We're hoping early May. We've started renovations and everything's moving along pretty smoothly and quickly. So we're hoping beginning of first or second week of May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Conlon?
I just want to clarify two things that I talked with our licensing agent about, and I just want to hear from you as the applicant, whether we're all on the same page, because your application had mentioned 15 seats, but the conditions that Jennifer McCullough prepared for us say 4 to 6 seats. Did your plans change since you submitted the application and you're looking for 4 to 6 seats?
So we went according to what was previously there, and what they had there was 15 seats, but our plan is 4 to 6.
Okay, so your plan is 4 to 6. Thank you. And then the hours was really the main change. I'm pretty sure Tino's closed at 9 o'clock because I remember going by there a few times and they were closed when I was coming home late from work. And you're looking to stay open until 11. So could you just explain what your reasoning for that is? I think I have a sense of it with the Henry's development occurring across the street and some of the limited options, but could you just speak to why you'd want to stay open till 11 in that location and what your plans are?
There's a few reasons why we'd want to stay open, but the main ones is because we are investing so much in this new project, we'd like to see it succeed as best as possible. And we feel as if staying open a little bit later would help us do that. Another reason would be there's nothing really in the area that's open that late. And instead of having people from the town having to order something via Uber Eats, DoorDash, and all those things from places that are out of the town, why not keep them from ordering something from the town and bringing that revenue back to Milton instead of elsewhere? Like, let's say, because everybody that orders online would have to get something from Boston or elsewhere because there's nothing in the area that's open. Michael, do you?
Yeah, especially revenue for us, and the town benefits through the meals tax.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Mr.
Madam
Denny?
Chair. Yeah, I would just like to add that both Joe Prondak, our building commissioner, and Laura Delakai both voiced their pleasure with working with this family. I was at Mackey's today getting my hair cut, and everyone is anxiously waiting for this place to open. So we'd love to welcome you to the town, and thank you for working so well with our health department and building inspector.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone's been great so far. Everyone's been so nice, and we're really excited.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm excited.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the transfer of the common victual license from Tino's Pizza to KME Milton DBA Stevie's.
Richard, friendly amendment pending final approval from the Department of Inspectional Services, the Fire Department, and the Health Department, and with the proposed conditions.
Thank you.
I thought, did you just say, Michael, they've already done the rest? Okay, I'll accept that, Katie. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Collins, yes. Thank you. And it was nice to meet you virtually. We'll all be in, I'm sure.
Oh,
good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Great. Thank you. And I have to note, it says in the application that they'll be creating 5 or 6 to 7 jobs. So isn't that great to have some more jobs?
You want a reference?
I'd need one. I haven't cooked. I cooked at McDonald's when I was in college, but
So did Mrs. Wells. Same job.
Chief Madden is still here. So if the board does not object, I'd like to take item 21 and move it up. It's the Metro Fire Mutual Aid Agreement for Joint Fire Rescue and/or Ambulance Service. I'd like to let him go because I know it's been a very busy time. As we all know, we've lost a really beloved institution in town. The Hoosick caught fire. Sorry, that's hard to talk about. And so this is timely, as Mr. Dennehy said, and I think he can do a better job of acknowledging all of the hard work, the dedication, and the care that went into keeping the neighborhood safe, and the firefighters keeping each other safe. Just the tremendous effort, and how much we appreciate it. So I think maybe we should start off with that, and then we can move into the agreement.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really want to thank the chief, Deputy Chief Jeff Murphy, and all of the firefighters. Inspector Mataliano was there. And as we talk about this Metro Fire Agreement, I asked the chief if he could provide me with email addresses for all of the surrounding communities that helped out. It was a complete team effort, community/regional effort. So Chief Donovan from Randolph, Chief Duty from Canton, Chief Jackson from Quincy, Chief Spillane from Dedham, Commissioner Jack Dempsey, who I worked with formerly in Boston, and all of our Milton firefighters that work so diligently as just after midnight, Monday into Tuesday morning. So Chief, I just want to thank you personally, and everyone that, for those that have seen the pictures and some of the videos, it was quite a fire, and the great call in the field by Deputy Chief Jeff Murphy to go to 3 alarms so quickly. I think there could have been a lot more damage to that neighborhood if you see some of the video. But thank you, Chief. And I think it's very fitting that this agenda item is on here tonight, that this Metro Fire Agreement, and Chief can go into briefly describing it, what it means to our community for this mutual aid that's provided from a regional approach. So thank you again, Chief, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And, everybody here just says that they were doing their job, but I was impressed at the way that it went. The outcome was not what we wanted. That's never what we want. We would rather, I don't know, we would rather a different situation. But working with the other cities and towns, it was, we have a great relationship with all the cities and towns around us. So the Metro Fire situation, not everybody can be Boston. Boston can handle 6 alarms on their own. We can't. We're just too small to be able to do that. So we rely on each other. And entering into this re-entering into this agreement speaks volumes for the way that we do our business, and that you guys would do your business, trusting us to go to Randolph, and Randolph coming here and bringing them in to do the job with us is important. And I think the other night was a true test of the way that it's supposed to go, the system. But I actually go back to Friday night. Before that, Randolph had a 2-alarm fire. We were there from 6 to 9. We had an engine company there from 6 to 9 p.m. They cleared, came back, cleaned up, washed up, got everything ready to go. Had a late dinner, and by 11 o'clock, they were on Clifton Road for a fire in our town, where Randolph then came to us. So within about an hour, they swapping back and forth. And that is so important for us, just to have that ability to know that we have help coming, just to make sure that we are safe, the residents are safe. And I don't necessarily call that a successful fire, the one on Clifton Road, but it was a small fire you never hear about, because the men and women did a fantastic job getting in there and knocking down that fire real quick, and with that help from the mutual aid partners. So this is important, and there's some incidents that are just way too big for us, and we do need the help. And this is an important way to go. So I appreciate all the accolades, Mr. Dennehy, and by the board, and Mr. Wells, Ms. Conlon. I saw you at the scene, and thank you. You showing up there that day means the world to the fire department. You know what I mean? Know that they have your support. So we appreciate it.
Yes, Mr.
Matt.
Go ahead, Richard.
No, go ahead, Arthur. I was just going to make a motion just for the point of
Same
discussion.
here. I have it right in hand.
Go ahead, read it. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Will you second? Madam Chair, I move to authorize the Milton Fire Department, including any ambulance or other EMS component, to go to aid another city, town, fire district, or area under federal jurisdiction in this Commonwealth or in any adjoining state in extinguishing fires therein, or rendering any other emergency aid or performing any detail as ordered by the head of the fire department. And while in the performance of their duties and extending such aid, the members of our department shall have the same immunities and privileges as if performing the same within this municipality.
Second, if I may have a moment, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
I just want to address the chief. He knows I'm very familiar with mutual aid, especially Metro Fire, and he's correct. It's one of the great tools that any fire chief has, any incident commander, to be able to have the reliance and the partnership with the communities around you. But just for the people at home and the people who don't understand, public safety is taking a very big hit in this community this year, especially the fire department and the police department, the two of them. For Chief Madden, when you brown out an engine, those seconds make so critical in saving and preserving human life. And I just want him to know that we're not unaware, we are not unsympathetic to this or unconcerned with that situation for you. And you know that, at least for me personally, that's something weighs very heavily with me.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I think you spoke for the whole board there.
I believe I did, Madam Chair. Thank you.
We realize it's a difficult budget year, and that's another kind of heroism when you dig deep, even though you have a need. So thank you.
We appreciate it. The fire department knows where, obviously, Mr. Wells stands, and all of you, and we appreciate it. Being my first year as chief, we've had some battles and some tripping points here and there, I should say. Some difficulties, but the fire service, it's what we do. You have a bad day or whatever it is, you pick your boots up and you go back and you go back to work. And like I said, that the men and women here, they're not looking for accolades. They just want, to do the job. They want to help. Someone calls 911, it's their worst day. We're there to make it better. And that's what we look to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you very much, Chief, and to you and all of the members of the force. We're very grateful for all you do.
Thank you.
This is one final question, Chief. Did the new IAAF president, Mr. Kelly, by any chance show up at the scene?
I believe he's probably a little bit busy right now.
Okay.
But local 1116 president has him on speed dial. So if we ever need anything on that side, Mr. Kelly would be a text away. So
For the members, Ed Kelly, who was the former president of the Boston Fire Union for many years and the president of Professional Firefighters in Massachusetts, has just been elected last week as the president of the International Firefighters. I believe it's the whole world. It's international, isn't it? Am I correct, Chief?
mainly U.S. and Canada. So yes, he is. He is the labor leader for the fire service in North America.
He is very well known to many of the firefighters here in Milton, a native of Dorchester, and I'm very proud of him, as Mr. Dennehy knows.
Thank you again, Chief, for spending all this time with us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's good to get out of the house
Madam
every
Chair,
once in a while.
if I may, a vote, roll call.
I apologize, my fault.
Oh, that's quite all right. Yes, Mr. Doyle.
Roll call, please.
Yes, we had the second.
Yes. Richard seconded.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay. Have a
Good night, Chief. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
There we are. Okay. So, I think our conference is really with Mr. Dennehy on this next one. So East Milton Square deck project, the pavilion or gazebo. Mr. Wells had a thought, which I think is a really fortuitous, that while things are in progress with the state down in East Milton Square, that if we do intend to do something in the lines of a pavilion or a gazebo in the deck park, that there may be some things that we would do better to coordinate with the state, so like electricity, or if a pad needs to be poured or something like that. But I think Mr. Dennehy can speak a little more eloquently about that. And I think you've been talking to Chase Berkeley.
Correct. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the members of the viewing audience, if you remember portions of the public process regarding the East Milton Deck project and the earmarks, there were one or two renditions from Halverson, who was the landscape architect, to put a gazebo in the southwest corner, so Boulevard at Bryant Avenue. It didn't make it to the final plans, but it was a very active discussion. Mr. Wells highlighted that and brought it to my attention. So Chase Berkeley is going to talk to Donnie Daly from MassDOT, who's the government liaison to all things MassDOT, to start the conversation as they proceed to replacing the structure and infrastructure at the deck, that they consider building infrastructure, electrical and utilities, and the concrete pad that you suggested, Madam Chair, to enable the possibility of putting a gazebo on there for some possibly some live entertainment, or just a nice relaxing place to sit, like we see people at the Baron Hugo on the town green. So that conversation will take place soon, so that the necessary infrastructure can be adopted in the plans. And I know Mr. Wells was previously had spoken to the Chamber of Commerce. I think Darrell Elliott was the president at that time, and there was an appetite then to help maybe fund that part of the project. So that conversation will continue, but just wanted to bring it to this board to know that the final plans that were presented did not have this on there, but that's something that I think should be reconsidered and potentially through a conversation with Chase Berkeley and Donnie Daly and the engineers at MassDOT before McKay Construction gets too far down the road on that project as they proceed through spring and summer.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
No.
Mr. Richard? I mean, Mr. Richard, oh my gosh, Mr. Wells, I need to go to bed, sorry.
It's the third time you've called me that tonight.
I
It's okay.
know, it's odd.
I'm becoming fond of it now. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Michael. You know, one of the things that, and what really spirited this in my mind was I thought it was in there, as I told you, and when I looked at the final design, I thought it was covered in trees and realized it wasn't there. And then I had conversations, as Michael said, with the chamber, with some of the business owners in the square, and they all thought it was happening. And really the thing that kind of highlighted for me is when we had the proposal for that winter, I can't remember what it was called, the winter, whatever it was on, I don't want to say Wonderland, I know it was winter something on Franklin Street. Many of the comments were this would be great in the gazebo. So, you know, if Halverson did do the Rose Kennedy Greenway, and you see how they make that come alive in the summer. I think with all the safety enhancements and improvements we're going to have infrastructure wise, it'll be safe to cross and go over to that. And I think we could probably bring some life to it. So my one question, Michael, in your discussions with Chase and Donnie Daly, would it possible for Halverson, without expense, I'm sure they have some type of concept that I saw this, they knew what the size of the footprint they were proposing was, just to kind of give us something to go with ourselves. I realize we'll have to raise private money for this, but I'm not afraid to take on that task myself and start championing it with whoever. But if they could just help us with that, because they definitely identified a section in an area where it should be, just not what it should, a concept of what it would look like. I know it was rectangular, the one they proposed, but just something to kind of give us something to wrap our hands around just to get started.
Right, yeah, and that,
Certainly.
that has been, that area has been set aside per the plans, so perhaps they do have something.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Okay, great, well, we're on our way. And, let's see, sorry, just want to see where we're at now. So item 11 is Federal Emergency Management Agency flood insurance rate map and flood insurance study report notification of period of for comment. So I did speak with Mr. Zerwinski a few days ago, and this has gone to engineering and the planning department. And the FEMA is, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency is changing the flood insurance rate maps, and individuals are able to comment on their maps, and the town is also able to comment. So this is just to register that this is coming up, and the deadline is, I think, June 16th. But the notice will go up on our website if it's not already up there. I think we were waiting until we just announced it at this meeting, and then we'll have a subsequent public meeting, so that people can attend and give testimony if they like. This is interesting to me in that if you want some sort of relief, or you have an objection to the map of your particular property, then you actually need some technical backup, which you know, I would think would take people a little while to pull together. And as I said, the notice will be going up. It should go up on the front page of the website, Mr. Denny. Okay, thank you. And as I said, we will be scheduling this for a future meeting. It was just seemed important to get this notification out. Mr. Dennehy, do you have anything to add?
No, just the letter is pretty self-explanatory. I meant to reach out to some surrounding communities to see if they received something similar, but it's being vetted by the Public Works Engineering Department and our town planner, Tim Zawinski, and we just want to let the public know. We'll put it on all social media outlets and on the town's web page for anyone that may have comments. There's a lot of contact information for FEMA, as you said, the Federal Emergency Management Association Administration.
Thank you. I also offered to Mr. Zawinski if he would like to be put in contact with the storm surge working group that I meet with periodically. They have a flood insurance expert. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you. Let's see. So discussion, it's really just a discussion. Well, maybe we'll have an approval. On the Historic District Study Committee nomination process. So we did receive 2 names from the Realtors Association, and I just received today a questionnaire from the Architectures Association in order for us to get people from them nominees. I actually have to fill out this survey or questionnaire, so we don't have anyone from them yet. We do have a few other names, but given what town council has told us about the nomination process, I'm wondering how we want to handle this, because if we have 5 spots and we have more than 5 people who are volunteering, would we like to look at that whole universe as a board and then make a decision, or would the board like to handle it in some other way where it just receives a slate of people? So I just would like to get that ironed out at some point.
I'd like to see all the nominees.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with, I would agree with that. I just look at all the nominees and then nominate and vote.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And we don't have a warrant, so we're going to defer item 14 and item 13. I think we can defer that. We can take positions on articles at a future date. It's not till May. Unless someone has a. Okay.
Fine with it.
Thank you.
I think we have a lot still to cover tonight, so.
Yes, it's 9 o'clock. So at a previous meeting, somebody had mentioned possibly looking at endorsing the fire station construction and appropriation ballot question, even though we already voted the form of it. And we can do that, but it's not really the board's typical process, because that's more of a political campaign type question, but we can if we would like to. If not, we can just strike that from the agenda. Mr. Wells, I think you were going to say something, and then I'll go.
I was, but let Arthur go first.
Okay, Mr. Doyle.
Just as part of our discussion on this, I think we are going to be asked what the position of the select board is on this important matter.
Mr. Wells.
I agree with Arthur, and the fact that town council has told us that we could take a vote to support this. In this case, this is such a big decision. I think it might be prudent of us to do that, but strategically, I'd rather do it closer to the vote, where obviously the press is going to report out on how we vote on this. That's just my own.
Okay, so I hear defer this until the middle, I guess, the middle of April or so, when we have a meeting at that time. Well, that's fine with me. Any objections? No. Okay. Welcome back, Mr. Zulus.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for helping us with that. Item 16, acceptance of grants to a grant to Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we accept a grant of $2,000 from Health Resources in Action to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition.
Second. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Next, we have a reappointment of Branch Lane as our tree warden.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to reappoint our long-term and long-serving tree warden, Mr. Branch Lane.
It'll be a pleasure to second, going back to being in the same Boy Scout patrol at St. Agatha's deep into the last century.
Oh, how lovely.
Don't admit that, Arthur.
Well, and I'm just going to propose a friendly amendment, Branch Lane of 85 Highland Street, with a term expiring March 31st, 2022.
I'm fine with that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. And now we have the appointment of Ashley Fawcett Green and James Brown to the Commission on Disability.
I'll move that we appoint Ashley Fawcett Green of 193 Hinckley Road and James R. Brown Jr. of 41 Standish Road to the Commission on Disability with terms expiring March 31st, 2024.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes, and thank you to both of them.
Yes. Mr. Doyle?
Yes, and excellent backgrounds.
Mr. Wells?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. I have to say, I was so grateful that such people with qualifications like this have heeded the call, and everyone on the Commission on Disability is very excited, I think, to be welcoming Ms. Fawcett Green and Mr. Brown. So thank you. Next, we're going to be deferring item 19, Town Administrator Review. And number 20, approval of the Select Board Annual Report for FY 2020.
Madam Chair, you want a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion I'm tongue-tied, to approve the Town of Milton Annual Report for 2020.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor? Ms.
The only thing I'll
Mr.
add,
Zul.
there were some,
Subject to final edits,
yeah,
Madam
there
Chair.
was
Thank you.
edits,
Yes,
and there's one larger edit that was brought up, I think it was by the chair. She suggested putting the COVID-19 piece first, which
Yes.
which I'm fine with, but that would be the only real change.
Yeah, I
I'll
forgot.
accept that. I'll accept that in final edits, just in case there's something. Yeah.
Right. But everybody, Mike, I'm sorry, before we vote, do you need help with that licensing portion?
Yes, I think we're I think we're getting some help on that.
Okay, great.
I hope we are. I think we are.
Great.
So, Madam Chair, just to clarify, so I think with the motion that was taken with the friendly amendment, we're basically you're approving this in substantially the form that we've seen it,
Right.
subject to some minor changes. So that's fine.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay, thank you very much. There a lot of work clearly went into that report, Mr. Zulus, so thank you. And we've taken care of item 21. Item 22, approval, agreement between the Town of Milton and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for professional services related to the Milton Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. So I think Mr. Zerwinski is actually busy with the hearing. Yes, Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request of our town planner, Tim Zerwinski. It's on the heels of a bicycle and pedestrian master plan that had been contemplated by the Master Plan Implementation Committee with input from the Bicycle Advisory Committee. So he had sent a memo around recently about this. Mr. Zerwinski is basically very excited to be working with MAPC should this board approve this to conduct research and outreach necessary to put a plan together for a such as this. If you recall, a lot of the Wikimap requests that we received were regarding multimodal requests, right? They weren't just traffic and volume. There were many pedestrian and bicycle safety issues that were brought to our attention. Chair Jeff Mullen, who's an avid cyclist, identified many of those specifically and sometimes personally. We all remember the recent tragic death on the Parkway not too long ago. So Mr. Zerwinski, who's an avid cyclist, is very adamant that the board take a hard look at this, and he'd be willing to spend a good amount of time with our counterparts at MAPC to develop a scope of work surrounding a plan for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. Yes, Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, based upon related discussion with the Master Plan Implementation Committee, which included input from Lee Toma of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, I'd like to move that agreement between the Town of Milton and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for professional services related to the Milton Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan be undertaken.
Arthur, I'll just offer a friendly amendment that we authorize the town administrator to sign the contract, and I'll second the motion.
I concur.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. I actually would like to move back to item number 21, the Metro Fire Mutual Aid Agreement. One thing we didn't put in the motion was to authorize Mr. Dennehy to sign that. I just realized that, so I'm glad you brought that up, Ms. Conlon. Could we?
I'll then amend the a motion to include that authorization.
I think you need a new motion, Arthur, because
I
it's a
think,
different
we just
matter.
need a new motion.
So you want to move
Even
this?
he doesn't,
You could just move to authorize Mr. Dennehy.
Right.
to sign.
That's, I didn't want to go through the whole, that's my point, right?
Right,
Not at
right.
all.
Just move to have him authorize.
So a motion, the motion before us is to amend to authorize the town administrator to sign or to negotiate, whatever is appropriate.
Right.
I renew my second.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to be clear here, though. I think this is a separate motion, you know,
Separate
because
motion.
we've already acted on, you can't really amend something that we've acted on a while ago. So I think it's, Arthur, that you're just authorizing the
Strike
town
the word
administrator
amend.
to sign the Metro Fire mutual aid agreement.
Right, just authorizing him to sign it, and that's it.
Right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Whale?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll jump back ahead. We are on the Comtronics request for proposals, but I don't know that we have a document for that, do we, Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, Town Council has asked that we defer this to the February, what month am I in? April, I believe it's April 14th meeting, which would be our next meeting, second Tuesday of the month.
Great, thank you.
There he is, Town Council,
Yes,
fresh
he is
off the
here.
warrant committee meeting.
Yes, hello, Mr. Freitag. Just in time, thank you for joining us. Hope the other meeting went well. We are now on item 24, a discussion regarding open meeting law complaint fired by Dr. Cindy Christensen and the select board's response. We're doing this in open session because it is after speaking with the town council and, you know, having an explanation of that this really has to do with the board talking during a town meeting. And it just seemed more appropriate to have it in open session. So, Mr. Freitag, would you like to outline the complaint and then the response?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag for the Office of Town Council. You did a nice job of summarizing it. The complaint focuses on the fact that during our recent special town meeting, the select board did have a what would ordinarily be considered or look like a caucus at our town meeting where select board members discuss the matter that's been raised before the town meeting at the table down in the front of the auditorium. And obviously during a Zoom meeting, we're not really able to do that. So the issue here is about the select board using a conference line that was provided by my office to discuss issues that were raised during town meeting in the same way that we would have done so, or that the select board would have done so had the meeting taken place at the high school. The response is that, and I forwarded you a draft copy of the response, but the response is that the Attorney General's office has stated, and actually includes in their guide on open meeting law, which is available to anyone to read online, that they've taken the position that the open meeting law does not apply to town meetings. And it's just really as simple and as straightforward as that. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. That's the way that I'll respond to the complaint. I do need the board to take a vote to authorize me to respond on the board's behalf. Now that you've all had a chance to take a look at the complaint, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do any board members have questions?
No.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to have Mr. Freitag respond to the complaint on our behalf.
I'll make a motion to have town council respond to the complaint on the open meeting law violation on behalf of the select board.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you, Mr. Freitag.
You're welcome.
Let's see, so we have approval of meeting minutes. Did everyone have a chance to go through these? I believe there were some edits, and I don't know if those edits were, I saw that there were edits, but I don't know if they went out to the rest of the board or if we need time to absorb those before we vote.
Madam Chair, I sent some edits and Hillary told me that she made them, but I don't know if they were recirculated. The primary one was that, I was listed as abstaining when I was actually recused, and that's a different issue. So I wanted to make sure that was clarified.
Yeah, I didn't have any additional changes.
Not an eye on my read.
Okay.
Katie, do you want a motion pending those final edits?
Yeah, I think that's fine because Hillary does have them and Katie just explained.
So I'll make a motion to approve. I don't have the dates though, because it's not on my
Oh,
agenda.
okay. Well, I'll make the motion to approve meeting
All right, I'll
minutes
second.
February 3rd and 22nd and March 1st and 15th of 2021 as amended for Ms. Conlon's description to the board.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Collins? Yes. Okay. So our future meeting dates, the 14th, and my calendar is very far away. And I can't reach it.
14th and 28th.
Thank you. I should have just added 14 days, but okay. So
Madam Chair,
yes.
might I add, I was just notified that the warrant committee did not vote on the budget articles this evening, and they will be voting on them Monday night. And Clerk Lynn Hoy has sent a suggested schedule around to us that I think is necessary to bounce off this board. They're looking at voting them next Monday, having an internal meeting a day or two after that, where we review the warrant before we send it to the printer for a draft. I don't think we're going to have time for both the draft and the final version. If this board has to approve that in between, which would be sometime the week after, which would be that they're suggesting February 5th. The drop dead deadline to the printer is April 7th. So we're gonna have to have a meeting next week because the warrant committee was unable to.
Okay, well, April 7th is the final,
Correct.
final.
Correct.
Well, I know Ms. Conlon and I both said that we would help where we can with proofing, but so we need to have a meeting. I'm trying to see. So they would have a meeting on the 29th. It's Passover on the 29th and the 30th and the 31st, and it's Ash Wednesday on the 31st.
No, Ash Wednesday. No, Ash Wednesday was a month ago.
Yeah, why do I have Ash Wednesday here? I remember. Why is it? Sorry, thank you.
They're suggesting a possible select board meeting on the 5th to approve the warrant articles and then sending it for the one and only time on the 7th. Understanding that they have to be printed by the 12th. The presses will run on the 12th, and they have to be in residents' homes by the 20th, 1 week prior to annual election.
Madam Chair?
You were talking about Mr. Dennehy having a meeting next week?
Right, after they vote the articles, just that internal meeting we do to make sure that the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted.
Right, that was supposed to be on the 29th.
Right, we're gonna have to move that.
I see, but you're not talking about a select board meeting. Yes, Mr. Wells?
So this, am I correct, Michael? They're suggesting we meet on the 5th, April 5th?
Correct.
Well, MPIC meets on the 5th.
But if we are gonna,
could do
Madam
it-
Chair, that's a Monday night. You know, I have an ongoing standing commitment on a Monday night, and I'm a little concerned about another board dictating to us when we're going to meet.
Right.
And I'm a little concerned that they haven't voted articles on as of March 24th, and that it's only 9:30, and they've apparently adjourned. So I'm wondering if there's an issue here because they voted a budget.
Well, I had
the other
suggested
evening.
they have a Saturday meeting, you know, and post it today. I just don't think that's enough time. I mean, we really, it's a big warrant, and I feel like it needs to go to the printer twice. But
What do you propose, Kate? What do you propose,
Is there a
Katie, that we
possibility then
do?
of this board meeting April 1st, which is a Thursday evening? I know the planning board often meets Thursdays and the ZBA. You know, now that we have 2 Zoom platforms, it might be possible, but the calendar is pretty booked up for these 40B proceedings.
well, I think the first, I feel much better about the first, not great, but better. And is there a possibility of us meeting earlier in the day then? Because that
would be much better for me if it was on the 1st. If we could do it in the morning, anytime in the morning, early
yeah,
or mid,
I
late.
just think the 5th is way too late. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
we were supposed to have it to the printer on the 1st, for the first go round, and then on the 7th, and this just, I don't understand, I just don't understand what's going on. at
Madam
this
Chair,
point.
this email from the warrant committee is proposing April 12th as the date for final changes to the printer. The election is April 27th. This has to be in the homes
No.
at least 4 days before, so that's just too late.
Right, it's not,
It's being printed and mailed on the 12th. That's far too late.
yeah, no,
that's just not-
it can't be. The drop dead date is the 7th. Yes, Mr. Wells?
Is this because they're trying to vote another budget other than what would propose to them? Is that that's my gut feeling here, is it looks like they're trying to vote another budget.
It's my understanding that they deliberated for quite some time tonight over the Adams Street recommendation and situation. There is Zoom availability on April 1st. The Zoning Board of Appeals is talking about the Ice House Blue Hills Parkway parcel that night, but we do have availability. Again, they meet at 7. We have two Zoom platforms now for webinars, so we could have one exclusively. We could do it earlier, but I would advocate that we meet on the 1st.
It's the 1st. I just can't.
Agreed.
I just can't.
Or even the 31st, which is our normal meeting date, a Wednesday. Does the 31st work? If they're meeting Monday, we could meet Wednesday night.
I could do that. I could do any time of the day up to like 3 o'clock on the 1st, and I can definitely do the 31st.
Let me just look at the schedule here.
Are we meeting just for this, Katie? We're just gonna meet for this,
Yes,
right?
we're just meeting
okay.
for this. That's why I suggested earlier in the day, that we don't have to do an evening meeting if we're just meeting to approve the warrant.
So there is availability, Madam Chair, on the 31st.
Okay.
I can make any time on the 31st, Madam Chair, and before 10 or afternoon on the 1st.
Okay. Yeah, I could do something before 10 on the 31st, or I'm having an eye exam, so that's at 2:30. So I could do something around 5, probably 4:30 or 5. Although my eyes will just be funny, so it doesn't matter. Mr. Denny?
Yeah, I'd just like to stress that maybe you and I speak to Chair Asher tomorrow and just make sure that they're finished next Monday, and however long it needs to take, and that this board is scheduled to meet on the 31st, and
Yes.
it needs to proceed accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Ms. Conlon, were you going to say something?
Well, I would, well, I don't mind before 10, but if it's after that, I'd prefer something after about 5:30 or 6 that on the 31st, because I have some late afternoon.
Okay.
appointments.
Mr. Zulus, what would work for you?
That's my preference.
5:30 or 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
I mean, what about 7? If we have to add anything else to we've got 42 items on the agenda tonight. If we have to add anything else, we could do it at the same time next week and do an evening meeting.
Okay. Would people like to meet at 7?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, whatever.
I think
I was
Richard
good
was
with
looking
5:30.
forward to 5:30. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just do 7. And yes, Mr. Dennehy I'm happy to get on that call. I was concerned that they wouldn't get finished. That's why I suggested they try to schedule this Saturday. So, okay.
Mike Zulus and I remember the days when the warrant committee used to go until 11 or 12, in the evening on February and March, especially when we got close to the deadline.
Even earlier than that. December, January, February, March. It was at 10:30 or 11 o'clock evening.
Okay, well, thank you both for doing that then, by the way.
We had a little box of candy in the middle of the table, and that kept everyone going.
Candy has always been a theme of the warrant committees. I don't know where it started, but it surely has been a theme there for as long as I can remember.
Oh, well, if you had been on my campaign committee, you would have gotten dark chocolate Hershey's Kisses. But anyway, great. Okay, well, thank you everyone for your willingness to meet yet again. And okay, back on track. Who thought that was going to be that long of an agenda item? Mr. Dennehy, do you have a report this evening? Oh wait, you're muted.
Sorry, just a couple of items. We didn't have a COVID agenda on here tonight, so I think just a brief chat about COVID. I want to announce some stuff about the upcoming town election, something on the DPW calendar, and then a couple of promotions at the Milton Police Department. I'm glad to announce. So last Thursday's report from the DPH for COVID cases in Milton, there was continued good news. Number of cases for the 2-week look back period sank to its lowest number of positive cases in Milton since the beginning of October. So all the work done by this board of health department has really paid dividends. On Sunday, the town hosted another free drive-through COVID testing day. Unfortunately, only 117 tests were administered, significantly our lowest since we began the program on December 20th. The good news is only 3 of those tests came back COVID positive, but it also gives us the opportunity to offer another free drive-through testing day. We're going to do it on April 25th, which will be the Sunday that ends the April school vacation week. Those people who may be traveling out of state or congregating and feel the need to have a test, can go to the public works yard. We'll promote it through social media and on the town's webpage, but it's going to be Sunday, April 25th from 10 to 3 at the DPW yard. Town clerk's office is pleased.
Mr. Doyle, did you have a question for Mr. Dennehy before you?
I did on COVID. Michael, would that be, just a question, if I may, thank you. Would that be the last COVID testing then that we would sponsor this year, do you think?
We do have the capacity for more. We have about 1,100 tests left in that transformative care Fallon ambulance contract that this board approved. Barring a quote unquote run on the bank on April 25th, we should have the capacity to do another one.
Good. So there's a nice question. And what, Michael, was the number again on the 21st?
So it's the number of tests.
Please.
We administered 117. We were doing anywhere from 700 to 1,000 in the previous week. So probably the combination of vaccination and COVID fatigue. But I certainly hope people aren't letting their guard down, right? We need to continue to stress the message that we mask up and social distance and continue to behave as we did this time last year and shortly after the holidays when we saw the uptick. And they're seeing it at the state level. They're seeing some rising numbers. So I did speak to Caroline Kinsella today. There were 9 positive cases yesterday in Milton. So we had 55 total in the previous 2-week period. So 9 in one day kind of echoes what's going on at the state level. So I think it's, we were thinking about doing another one possibly after Easter, but it is Easter Sunday. We don't know how many people would turn out. We don't want to waste everyone's time if we're not going to get the turnout. So we think that Sunday when everyone returns from April vacation should be a pretty good bang for our buck.
Good. Thank you.
Great. Yep. Just to touch upon the election, the annual town election will take place on the 27th. As you know, the governor extended the vote by mail and early voting by mail and absentee voting this year due to the pandemic. It's eligible to all voters. The deadline to register to vote is Wednesday, April 7th for the Tuesday, April 27th annual election. And the deadline, I know I'm throwing a lot of dates at people, but the deadline to request an absentee or early vote by mail ballot is 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 21st. So there's a press release that's on the town's website, and any questions can be directed at the clerk's office, 617-898-4859. Just a reminder to everyone, a true sign that spring is here is the curbside yard waste collection program will begin next week in Milton. It's on your regular scheduled trash day. Put the material out properly. So it's from March 29th through April 2nd. We will start doing this bi-weekly through June. We'll have 1 week then, the month of July, August, and September before we get to the larger fall program. But again, next week is the first week for the rollout of the curbside collection program. And lastly, I just want to announce proudly that Patrol Officer Mary E. Koska, who we call Beth Koska, formerly known as, our friend who's been with the department, and I'm sure Mr. Wells can add some commentary, since 1997 has been promoted to sergeant. So I want to thank Beth for her service as a patrol officer in town for so long and congratulate her on her promotion to sergeant. We also have Sergeant Lamb Roper, who's being promoted to lieutenant. If you remember, Lieutenant Bill West retired in January, which opened up this promotion opportunity for both of these wonderful civil servants in our town. So congratulations, Lieutenant Liam Roper and Sergeant Beth Koska. Mr. Wells, you want to add anything to that?
No, you're still muted. Still muted. That's odd. Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair. All of a sudden,
There
the
you
screen
are.
went, the screen went completely blank. I apologize. No, congrats to both. I know them both very well. Hired Liam. Beth started as a cadet. Liam's much quieter and more reserved, but a highly efficient man. But Beth is a very high-profile person in town. She's been on days for a long time. She's been seen. She's a regular figure. So best wishes to both of them. I wish them both the best. Especially Beth being a sergeant. Poor Liam, now he's more of an administrator, but for being a sergeant, it's the best job in the department. So congrats to both.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. Do members have reports? We'll just start with you, Mr. Wells. You're unmuted. Do you have a report?
So just two things. I think we all know this, but I just want to perhaps mention, as we know, our long-serving Superintendent Mary Gorman, who loves this town dearly. Her mother Helen passed away last year, and Mary was deeply devoted to her. And I just think we should send along our best wishes to Mary. I mean, it was a hard thing for her. Much as you can relate to Katie, you know, even similarly, you take care of your parent who's cared for you all your life. So I just want to send out our condolences and thoughts and prayers to Mary and all of her family. The death of her mother Helen. Great lady. If you ever knew her, she was quite the woman. And then a second thing is that I just want to congratulate, you know about this, Madam Chair, Kathy Fagan, a former member of this board, who is the Deputy Director of the Elizabeth Stone House, which is really one of the marvels in the city of, actually in Roxbury, in the city of Boston. It does extensive work with domestic violence victims. They had quite a virtual fundraiser tonight which was hosted by Stacey Abrams from Georgia. And they raised almost $100,000 already tonight for domestic violence victims and for transitional housing for domestics and domestic violence victims. So congratulations to her. She has worked extremely hard for months on this. And I also just finally want to thank Kevin Dambruch and Joan Clifford, who were 3 musical acts that were the keys in this tonight, and they had nowhere to film it. And they went in last week. We arranged that they went in each one of them singly and recorded at the Milton Arts Center. And if you get to see it, it's online. If you Google Elizabeth Stonehouse, you can watch the performances tonight. I can't believe the job that they did. You'd think it was like in Hollywood somewhere. It's just pretty amazing. So I'm glad that we were able to help with that and bring those people here to Milton and have a role in it. So, thank you very much, Kathy. Congrats.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon, do you have a report?
No report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, I just mentioned that the Master Plan Implementation Committee has been looking at town and state-owned lands that may be candidates for possible affordable housing units. And numbers of each group have some conservation restrictions. Some of the lands in Milton are owned by the Conservation Commission. The chair of the commission and the commission's conservation agent will be meeting with the Master Plan Implementation Committee at its meeting on April 5 to review these parcels in that context.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Mr. Zulus, do you have a report?
No report.
Thank you. And I realize there's the Eagle Scout project under members' reports, but we'll be hearing about that, I think, in the future as the project develops. There's no public comment response. Future agenda items. Does anyone have something that hasn't been developing as we go along? No. I think we were just talking about some community happenings. So, but does anyone have another one? No. Okay, great. Thank you. So just to let people know, we're going to be entering some executive sessions, and then we'll return to open session in case there are things that we need to discuss in open session from those executive sessions. And then we'll be going back into executive session for some other items not to return at that point. But at this point, we're going to enter executive session and we'll be back in open session. Thank you. Welcome back to the select board meeting. We are now back in open session to discuss an RFP for 334 Edge Hill Road. We have a draft of an RFP for 334 Edge Hill Road for to lease the property. And do members have any questions for Mr. Freitag on the RFP?
I'll make a motion to declare the property at 334 Edge Hill Road, Milton, Mass. Available for disposition by lease.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay, great. And can we approve the RFP at the same time now?
I'll make a motion to approve the RFP as written.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay, thank you. Next item is to declare 101 Blue Hill Avenue available for disposition.
I'll move to declare the property at 101 Blue Hill Avenue Parkway, Milton, available for disposition by sale.
Thank you.
I'll second, but just in front of me, that's 101. We're talking 101 Blue Hills Parkway.
Thank you. Blue Hills Parkway.
Did I say
That's
it?
correct. Yeah, yeah. Blue Hills Parkway.
Yeah, I may have said it wrong. So All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, thank you. And let's see, so now I'm going to move to re-enter executive session for the following purposes pursuant to MGL 30A, section 21, subsection A, subsection 6, sometimes known as purpose 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property based on my belief that having such a discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board, specifically with regard to 41 Worth Street. Also pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, subsection 1, sometimes known as Purpose 1, to discuss an open meeting law complaint filed by Mr. Peter Culhane and the Select Board's response. And also pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 22, to approve executive session meeting minutes for September 16th, 2020, not to return to open session following discussion.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you and good night.